the so-called war on drugs, so that most of us have grown up unable to think freely and independently about such issue. We hear the word drug and we automatically assume that it's a bad thing. My own view, controversial though it may be, is that governments have no right to rule and tell us what we may or may not put inside our own bodies as adults. We alone are responsible for that. As long as we do not get into other people's faces, as long as we do not do harm to others, the moment we start doing harm to others, then governments may have a role to prevent us from doing so. But if we do no harm to others, then I don't think the government has any business, whether it's absinthe or anything else, in ruling that we may or may not put it into our own bodies. We are adults. We have the right to make decisions about our own bodies. And it's an absurd transgression of human liberty that governments take it upon themselves to tell us what we may or may not put into our bodies. And in fact, by convincing us that they have a right to tell us to do that, they are opening the door to all kinds of other infringements of our liberties. And we are seeing those infringements of our liberties spreading out all around the world today. Far from becoming a free society, our societies in the West are becoming increasingly unfree. And I think this campaign to control what we do or do not put into our bodies are at the heart of this transgression of liberty that is now underway. The problem is that the legislation actually doesn't work. If we wish to prevent people from taking harmful substances, then making those substances criminal and illegal and ruining people's lives and putting them in prison for up to 30 years for taking them, that's not the way to go. Look, we have a very clear example of this, which is the issue of smoking tobacco. Smoking tobacco is not illegal in our societies, but there has been a very effective and efficient information campaign which has persuaded adults that it is not in their interest to smoke tobacco. And as a result, we can look at the statistics. Over the last 25 years, there's been a vast reduction in the smoking of tobacco. This has happened without any criminal sanctions whatsoever. On the other hand, if you take substances like heroin and cocaine, against which there are massive punitive criminal sanctions, do we see a reduction in the use of those substances in our society? No, we don't.
What about alcohol? Why do you think...
Let me just finish on that. We don't see any reduction, and this suggests to me that our governments, as in so many other areas, are not being honest with us. They are lying to us about the reasons why all of these substances are illegal. It is really about control of the state over individuals that's going on here. A precedent is being set where the state, we ourselves, acquiesce and stand back and allow the state to intervene in this most intimate area of our lives, what we choose to do as adults. And once we allow that, then we're prepared to allow the state all other kinds of transgression of our liberties as well.
Alcohol.
Yes, well, there's another extremely damaging drug, which is extremely dangerous to human health, which is, of course, completely legal in our societies. Much more dangerous to human health than psilocybin mushrooms, for example.
Oh, indeed. Indeed.
Vastly more dangerous. What about the motor car? What about the tens of thousands of people who are killed every year on the roads? What about painkillers like paracetamol, which are entirely legal and yet are responsible for thousands of deaths every year? Take it further. What about what about knives? I mean, people get killed by knives. What about fires? Why aren't fires illegal?
But if you just stay in the realm of drugs, Graham, alcohol
yeah, but what I'm saying is that the principle that something should be made illegal because it is harmful to our health, this is actually not the real reason why drugs are being made illegal, because if it was, then other substances that are harmful to our health would be made illegal. We would not be allowed to drive in motor cars because those are harmful to our health. So the real reason is something else. It's about control. It's about certain individuals in our society who have controlling mentalities and who gravitate towards government. And they seek all kinds of excuses and reasons to control us. And that, I'm convinced, is what the war on drugs is really all about. It's certainly failed in its own objectives. It has not cut down the consumption of heroin and cocaine. It has caused a great deal of misery. If we really want adults to stop taking heroin and cocaine, then we need to provide them with information that is honest, that they believe, that is not corrupted and full of lies, beneficial to the interests of the powers that be, beneficial to the interests of those who control our lives, who tax us until we have hardly a penny left to spend, and who take our money and plow it into the creation of huge armed bureaucracies which exist to oppress us. I'd like to say at the outset, I do have very strong views on this issue, and I think it's outrageous in a supposedly free society after 2,000 years of progress towards so-called democracy, that we live in a society today where we may not make the decision as adults privately in our own homes, doing no harm to others. We are not allowed to make the decision to explore our own consciousness through the use of ancient and sacred plants that have been used in shamanistic cultures for tens of thousands of years. If I am not sovereign over my own consciousness, then I am sovereign over nothing. And it's an absurd joke to talk about democracy and the wonders of democracy when I live in a society that will not allow me to explore my own mind using tools and techniques that have been used by mankind for tens of thousands of years. But that is the society that we live in today. And rather than being outraged and angry about this, we've been lulled into a sense of security, false security. We've been told that our governments are acting in our interest to protect and preserve our health, when in fact what they're doing is infringing on the very essence of ourselves, upon our consciousness. I'm not here to advocate drugs. I know that many drugs are harmful and dangerous, but I am here to advocate adult personal responsibility. And unfortunately, we now live in a society where adults are not allowed to take responsibility for their own lives, where bureaucrats and social workers interfere with our lives in every way and tell us what we may or may not do, and even enter the inner sanctum of our own consciousness and tell us what we do there. And it's utterly disgusting to me that we live in a society that can throw, as I said earlier, 24-hour a day, completely meaningless and mindless television at us, which of course is affecting our consciousness in all sorts of negative ways, and that is okay, but that we may not experiment with ancient and sacred plants such as peyote, such as the ayahuasca brew from South America, such as iboga from Central Africa, which have been used in shamanistic ceremonies to explore the supernatural realm for tens of thousands of years. Something terrible has gone wrong with the society we live in, and our own money, our own tax dollars are being turned against us, funding huge armed bureaucracies that may enter our homes, that may deprive us of our property, that may put us in jail, not because we did any harm to anybody else, but simply because we chose to explore our own consciousness. And I think any right-thinking citizen, any free-thinking individual should be outraged and should shout with anger at what is happening to us today and about how this is being allowed to continue.